owner of the house. So he has the authority for starting the prayer, and we should respect that authority and give the Imam time to come and to be actually performing the Jamaah. It is permissible for whoever prays Fard alone to pray in Jamaah after, but will be considered nafil for him. So someone prayed Jamaah Dhuhr, and then someone came to pray alone. He came late. I can stand next to him and pray with him again 4 rakats. For me it is nafil, optional. For him it is Jamaah. So I am donating on him, like the Prophet ﷺ. He finished the prayer and someone came late and he started praying. The Prophet ﷺ said, who wants to donate on him? What does it mean? Like you are giving him donation. What donation are we giving him? Ajr, reward. Why? Because we are giving him the reward of praying Jamaah. So we are as if we are donating to that person. It is very recommended actually, if someone is praying only alone, to support him to become a Jamaah.
Is it the same prayer? Let's say Asr and then do Asr again?
Well, Asr is the only one that the scholars said it is because it's going to be nafil in the time of impermissibility of prayer. So it's not permissible to pray after Asr. That's why it's a bit questionable. There is a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ did that after Asr for some companion who came late, but there are some talks about whether this hadith is authentic or weak. That's why it's better to leave it for the prayers when these prayers are in the times of prohibition. So for example, Dhuhr, Maghrib, Isha, you can do. Fajr, you already prayed. It's prohibited to pray after Fajr until the sun rises. So if it is Fajr, no. If it is Asr, no. But the rest of the prayers, you can.
Same intention.
Same
Maghrib.
For you, for example, if someone came late for Maghrib, you already finished Maghrib, and you want to pray with him to support him, to give him the reward, donate on him, you should not pray 3 rakats. You join him. Why? Because your intention is not fard now. It is optional. So what do? You join him with the intention of optional, and as optionals should be 2-2, as the Prophet ﷺ said. Optionals are 2-2. So I cannot pray 1. So what I do is I pray with him 3 rak'ahs as he prays, and then when he does salam, I stand up and make number 4. So it becomes actually an even number, as the Prophet ﷺ said.
What about in the case of if you prayed Asr and somebody else is praying Asr and you join him with the intention of a Qadha Asr, catch up one of the Asr?
That's accepted. Because as we said, for something like this you can do Qadha. Now when to stand for Iqamah, there is nothing spoken about this in the hadith, but only one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he said, when you see me coming for the prayer, stand. So that's the only time when we stand. Otherwise, if the Iqamah is there, and like what mostly happens in our masjids, Iqamah is there, the Imam is not there, and it's time for Iqamah, and then they need to pray, but they need to put one of the Imams or one of the people who is there. So when to stand for Iqamah, for Salah? Some scholars said, when the Iqamah is Hayya ala al-Falah, you stand. When the Iqamah says Allahu Akbar, stands. Some scholars said, when they finish the Iqamah, stand. Okay? So actually, it's sunnah to wait in the Iqamah. Sometimes I will be sitting to apply the sunnah, and the Iqamah starts, Allahu Akbar, and someone will stand up. No, we need to apply the sunnah as the Prophet ﷺ taught us. I need to wait, because all the scholars, they said, you don't stand up straight away, unless the Imam came. If the Imam came, then we can start following the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But if the Imam did not come, we should wait until either the Iqamah finishes, or Hayya al Falah, or Qad Qamat al Salat, or Qad Qamat al Salat. People stand up because the prayer has started, and so on. What are excuses acceptable for leaving Friday prayer or leaving Jamaah? Number one, sickness that prevents the person from leaving the house, as well as heavy rain. So, if the person is really sick and he cannot leave the house, he's in the bed, he cannot move, then he doesn't need to go for Jamaah, and he doesn't need to go for Friday prayer. It's already been an excuse for him. If it is a really heavy rain, meaning that if I leave the house, I might have some harm, I might be harmed, then I don't leave the house. If a nurse is nursing, however, don't have any support apart from you, and you are nursing with that sick person, then that person can actually skip the Jamaah and skip Friday prayer. Because the life of the person is more important. It's a necessity in our religion. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was sick, he ordered Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to lead the prayer. Meaning that he was sick in his room, and his room is next to the masjid. Yet he did not pray Jamaah. And he asked Abu Bakr to pray. Meaning that sickness is actually an excuse not to pray Jamaah. If the person fears harm for himself or harm for his wealth, so if I go to the masjid, there is a group, for example, who are waiting for me to leave the house to rob my house, and I'm seeing them, and I call the police did not arrive. I cannot leave the house. I know if I leave the house, even for Jum'ah, they will come and steal my house. Then I don't leave the house. If someone, for example, is outside my house and he's threatening my family, or he's threatening blah blah blah, and I know that if I leave the house, my family will be under danger, then I don't leave the house, even if it's a Jum'ah prayer. For his family, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, it's only fear and sickness that can prevent us. The scholars said as well, delay of cure, meaning that if you have a problem with your knee, and you started actually recovering, but the doctor said to you, don't walk on your knee, because that will delay the cure of your knee. Then don't walk on your knee, and you don't need to go for Jum'ah, or don't need to go for Jamaah. If the doctor said that if you walk, it will increase your sickness, it might deteriorate, then you don't walk, you stay at home. Okay? Number 3, rain or muddy. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was a desert. So, when it rains, it will become muddy. So, at that time, the Prophet ﷺ used to call, actually, like for example, this hadith, this is an authentic, all of the hadiths I quote in my lessons are all authentic from Bukhari and Muslim. Ibn Umar announced the adhan for prayer on a cold, windy night. Then added, pray in your dwellings. And then he said, when it was cold, rain night, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to command the mu'adhin to say, pray in your dwellings. So it's actually a sunnah. If it's really cold and it's really freezing, to pray at home. So you get more reward to pray at home. If it is a heat wave, like what happens a lot in Adelaide, and at the Dhuhr time, it's 45. And then some people insist on going and praying in the masjid. They might actually harm themselves from the heat or from the sun. Then it is actually sunnah to pray at home. Because the Prophet ﷺ ordered the companion, the mu'adhin, to say, pray in your dwellings. pray at your houses. Do not come to the Jamaah. When it's really, really raining and it's really, really hard to arrive there and it's not safe, then pray at your home. If the person is pushing urine or poop and he wants to go to toilet and he just arrived at the masjid, he wants to go to the masjid to catch the prayer, but at the same time he feels he wants to go to toilet. No, go to toilet. Don't go and pray. You don't need to join the Jama'ah while you are not focusing or concentrating. When the person comes with a smelly food he has eaten, like garlic, like onion, like he was smoking, like he was a butcher. It happens with you a lot. You are butchering, you are doing lots of slaughtering for animals, and then you come to pray in the masjid. Your smell is already actually can harm people. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever ate from these two trees, which is the garlic and onion, do not come to our musalla, do not come to our masjid, because he will harm. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the angels will be actually harmed by what the human being will be harmed. So meaning that even the angels will be interrupted by the smell. If the person has a contagious disease, meaning that he just finished his flu or whatever, why should you go to the masjid and actually harm your brothers? Because if you are in the prayer and then you sneezed inside the prayer, 3-4 people around you already caught the disease. So it should not be that we go to the masjid to pray Jama'ah in these cases. If the person is in prison, then he doesn't need to pray Jama'ah. If there is an earthquake, of course, there is any catastrophic disaster. If the person is searching for something he lost, which is valuable, he doesn't need to go for Jama'ah. He can continue. Yeah? If the person is chasing someone who stole from him something, like he stole his car, and then he jumped in his other car and he started chasing. Jama'ah came. Shall I go to the masjid? No, he stole my car. I need to keep chasing him until I get my car. If the person is in depression, he doesn't need to go to Jama'ah. If the person is preparing a dead body, he's washing the dead body, he doesn't need to go to Jama'ah. Wedding. Some scholars actually said that the Jama'ah is not required for the male after wedding for a certain number of days. The maximum they spoke about is 6 days. That if he is the first time he is getting married, they said up to 6 days. If he is his second marriage, they said only 1 day. Some people said 3 days. But if he is actually, this is his first marriage, they gave him up to 6 days not to go to the Jama'ah. And there is a reason, of course, for that. Some Imams, they lengthen the prayer a lot. And it's actually sometimes like what happened. Mu'adh bin Jabal was lengthening the prayer, and he was the Imam, and one of the companions did not want to pray behind him, and he did not go to the Jama'ah, and came to the Prophet ﷺ and complained to the Prophet ﷺ that Mu'adh lengthens the prayer, and I am not going to pray Jama'ah anymore. The Prophet ﷺ did not say to him, no, you have to go. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? He came to Mu'adh and said to him, أَفَتَّانٌ أَنْتَ يَا Mu'adh? Are you creating fitna, O Mu'adh? So the scholars, they said, if this problem happened, meaning that the Prophet ﷺ did not direct the person to go to the Jama'ah regardless of the situation of the prayer. No, he came to the Imam and he directed the Imam to what to do. Meaning that the person, if he feels that the Imam is really lengthening the prayer a long time, then he can actually skip the Jama'ah. Or maybe go to the another masjid. Or an Imam is too fast to the extent that you cannot read anything, you cannot do anything, you feel you are just in a race. Then you can skip the Jama'ah if you don't feel that you are engaged. If the person is blind, the person lost one leg, the person lost one hand, if he has disability, he doesn't need. Darkness at the time of the Prophet ﷺ was an excuse. Especially when the moon is not there, nobody can see anything, there is no light. Darkness is an excuse not to go to the Jamaah. But nowadays, of course, it's not an excuse. Old age, someone is really old, he hardly can walk, he doesn't need to go. If someone is hungry and the food is there, the wife is already prepared their dinner, and then it's time for Salat al-Isha, they're already adhan, and he wants to go to the adhan, and the food is on the table. No, sit down and eat. Sit down until you are satisfied with the food, and then you can pray. Let's speak about being an Imam. There are two types of Imam. The great Imamah and the small Imam. What is the great Imamah? Anyone knows what's the great Imamah? Khalifa. The great Imamah is the Khalifa, which is that he is the Imam in all matters of deen and dunya, in this life and in religion matters. That is, all the scholars said that having that Khalifa or Imam is an obligation on the Ummah. And if there is no Khalifa, what does it mean? All the Ummah are sinning if they don't work actually to have that Khalifa. Because that's a key for the Muslims, to have a Khalifa. When was the last time that we lost the last Khalifa? Who remembers? When was the last Khalifa that we lost? No? No? Yeah, not Abdul Hamid. No, after him there were two. When was the last Khalifa? After that we did not have any Khalifa for the Muslims. Anyone remembers? It's 1924. That's when the Khilafah was dismantled, and since then we did not have any Khalifa. Before that, from the Prophet ﷺ time until 1924, we had every time we had a Khalifa for all the Muslims. Since then, almost 100 years, no Khalifa for us. It's an obligation for the Muslims to have a Khalifa. So anyone who is a Muslim and he is not working for that obligation, he is under accountability. The Khalifa, which is the great Imam, needs to be a Muslim, free, male, sane, capable, and he needs to be from Quraysh. Who's Quraysh? The tribe of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-A'immatu min Quraysh. The Khalifas or the A'immah, which are the great Imams, they have to be from Quraysh. So that's one of the requirements for a Khalifa. It can be achieved by choice, by voting, by all type of passing the authority. And then we are going to speak about the small Imamah, which is the Imam of the prayer. Conditions of Imam. There are conditions for anyone to be capable to be an Imam. Number one, he needs to be a Muslim. The Imam that's not Muslim is unacceptable. Number two, he needs to be sane. So anyone who lost his mind cannot be an Imam. Number three, puberty. Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad and Imam Abu Hanifa said, if a boy that did not reach puberty cannot be an Imam. Only Imam Shafi'i accepted that he can be an Imam for others. How do we know which is the best ruling? There is a hadith, an authentic hadith. Amr ibn Salama said, I was Imam at the time of the Prophet ﷺ when I was 7 years old. And that's the only hadith, which is an authentic hadith, that gives us the indication that we can have an Imam which is a young person, but if he is actually capable. Male, if the followers are males, we cannot have it said male. If nowadays we might have some other stuff, which is homosexuals. In Islam actually, Islam spoke a lot about homosexuals. But the homosexuality that Islam spoke about is the homosexuality of an actual physical homosexuality, which are genuine cases, which are cases with people, for example, and these are written in the Fiqh books and lots of details, which were born with two types of gender parts. Then the scholars, they said, these are homosexual and they need to be treated in a specific way. These homosexual, they cannot be imams. Okay? And if a homosexual actually was an imam, and then it was discovered that prayer needs to be repeated by the males because they cannot have an imam who is homosexual, which is the genuine homosexual. Not homosexuality that we see nowadays, which is not genuine, and there is no criteria actually to know whether he is a genuine or he is not a genuine. Cleanliness from the hadath and impurities, so he needs to be on full wudu. Acceptable from the followers, meaning that those who are behind him, they accept him to be an imam. The Prophet ﷺ said, 3, their prayers will not go beyond their heads 1 hand. One of them is someone who is an imam for people and they hate him. So his prayer will not be accepted. So he needs to be actually accepted by the followers.
Do they need to be valid reasons to hate?
They need to be valid, of course, not any reason. The imam needs to be able to read, and he knows the pillars of the salah to be a valid imam. The imam cannot be a follower, meaning that we are praying in Jamaah and there is a follower and someone actually tapped on the shoulder of one of the followers while they are in the prayer. He is following the imam and someone followed him. That's unacceptable and that prayer is invalid. The imam needs to have correct tongue. There are lots of deficits in tongues amongst people. Some people change letters, and that's nature. I don't want to call it disability, but that's how they were created. Like some people change ra into gha. They cannot be imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. They cannot be an imam. Why? Because they changed letters. Some people, they change tha into sin. For example, anyone can remind us? Tha into sin, any verse of the Quran? فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. He will say, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. That's, for him, it's valid. He can pray for his own self. He cannot be an imam for people with correct tongue. So any imam with a tongue that has deficit, that changes the letters, he cannot be an imam. Last thing, if we don't have an imam for a masjid, who should we pick for the imam? Number 1, the scholars say the wali, the khalifa. If he is there, he needs to be there. If he is not there, they spoke about the knowledge. Why is it the knowledge? Because it's very important that the person knows what are the pillars of salah, and if he made a mistake, to know how to correct the mistakes. But if he is a good reciter of the Quran and doesn't know the rulings of the salah, and then what happened is he made a mistake in the prayer, he could not actually correct that mistake, he might invalidate the prayer because of his lack of knowledge. So knowledge is before reciting the Quran. So if they are equal in knowledge, then who recites the Quran more? Who memorized from the Quran more? He needs to be there. If they are equal in memorization, who have more wara? Wara is high consciousness. If they are equal in wara, who's earlier in Islam? The scholars, they listed long list on how to choose an imam, which is more actually proper to be an imam. If they are all, they became Muslim, they are all born Muslim, then who is better in lineage? If they are the same, who has a better history, meaning that he did not commit sins? He's known that he was without sins. Who is cleaner in clothes if they are all the same? The cleaner in clothes, they will pick him as Imam. If they are all clean and their clothes are nice and tidy, who is cleaner in body? If they are all clean, whose work is cleaner? For example, a tradesman who is working as a butcher, and another one who is working in a desk and behind an office. No, the cleaner work. Why? Because we are speaking about, for example, some smell, some other stuff. Then comes the better voice. See, nowadays what they do, the first thing that they put the person in front for Imamah is who? The most beautiful voice. See the list? The list, where did they put the better voice? It's almost in the bottom. All the people are just flipping things upside down. It needs to be according to the list. According to all the scholars, the four scholars agree that the first one is the knowledgeable person. Not the first one is the beautiful voice. Because that's more important for the prayer. And then the more beautiful face. If they are all actually knowledgeable, they are all beautiful, the most beautiful face. And then the married before the single. So all of these to tell you how actually the scholars, they tackled all of these in how to choose the imam. Okay, let's see if we have any. Elaborate on what is classified as losing one's mind. Does it relate to mental health issues? Schizophrenia? Epilepsy? Okay. This is something that I need to go into more details in order to answer this. I think this is something that is nowadays a recent issue, hasn't been before. Previously, what we mean by losing one's mind is becoming crazy, out of order. He's not controlling his thinking, he's not controlling himself. That's what used to happen. Out of the sudden, the person goes crazy, so he loses his mind. That's what we mean by loses his mind, meaning that he's unaccountable, he does not know what he is doing, his acts are not actually in control by himself. But if you apply this on these people who are in schizophrenia or epilepsy, then yes. But if they are in control of themselves, meaning that they are knowing what they are doing, but they have some depression, some stress, they are still in control. You understand? They did not lose their mind, but they are still in control of everything. If you ask them, they remember what they have done. They remember what they need to do. Meaning they are in control. Losing mind meaning that lost control of all of his body, of his brain, of everything. Okay? Yet, I don't want this to be accepted as a final answer, but that needs actually not someone like me to answer it. It needs a consultation of scholars to sit down with psychologists and psychiatrists, and then they come and just classify for us. Because this is a new issue that arises to the Muslims. They need to classify, okay, this level is accepted as losing mind and accountable. This level is still within. It might be that within the schizophrenia itself, it might be some limits or some grades that still people are in control. What do you do when you forget which rak'ah you are in during prayer? So you need to make sure that you have at least a base where you say, definitely I prayed one rak'ah at least. Then you build on what you are sure that you have done. Okay? The hadith referring to Isha and Fajr being the heaviest prayer on the hypocrites is not taken literally, because I heard that in the time of the Prophet there were no lights in the masjid and so on. Well, there were no lights in the masjid, but the Prophet ﷺ actually, at some time one of the companions brought light to the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him and said, may Allah light your grave, light what you have lightened the masjid. So, no, there were lights in the masjid at some stage. But that's not what's meant by the hadith. What's meant by the hadith is that the person feels heavy going to pray. That's what's meant by the hadith. So they are the heaviest. And then you usually see him missing these two prayers. He might be praying easily Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib in Jamaah, but when it comes to Fajr or when it comes to Isha, he hardly go to Jamaah in the masjid or in group. The hypocrites, they didn't go because nobody would see them, but during the day they would go just to be seen. Might be, but the case of the hadith, as the Prophet ﷺ said, it's burdensome, it's heavy, meaning that Fajr, people are sleeping. They want to continue sleeping. So it's heavy for the person to wake up. Or at the night, he's just sleepy and he wants to sleep. It's heavy for him to stand and pray. That's what's meant. But that doesn't mean that this explanation is not valid. It might be actually correct. But this is what I understand from the hadith, is the heaviness of the person himself to stand and pray, rather than because of that. Referring to the hadith of the blind man, does that apply to us since we now have adhan applications on our phones? Of course not. It's only applied for the adhan that is used to be on the manara of the masjid. And only those who can hear by the normal voice, they have to reply to the call. If you hear the adhan on there, now what do? We don't have adhan here in Adelaide. What shall we do? What is the norm? If someone stands and make an adhan, what is the normal distance that adhan will reach? And that's, the scholar said, that's the distance where someone should not actually pray except inside the masjid. Because if it was normal adhan, he would have heard that adhan. Okay? What are the conditions of hearing the adhan? Example, if adhan is heard through microphones in masjid, does that make it fard to attend and be sinful if they did not attend? As I said again, it's the same case. It should be by voice, and how far it reaches by voice, because nowadays we can have the speakers and they can reach really wide or far. Someone can argue saying at their time there were no cars, now we have cars. So if it is acceptable for their time only because they are walking to come to the masjid, if they are hearing, nowadays we have cars, so if we hear the adhan through the microphone, then we should reply. Well, that's an argument, you can argue, but sticking to what was the condition by the Prophet ﷺ is to hear the adhan. To hear the adhan by voice. Are the rewards of congregation at the home and reward? Should someone donate to someone in the house by praying, congregating? If you are going to his house and he did not pray, you already prayed, and he wants to pray, for example, Dhuhr, you can donate on him in his house, no problems, for him to pray in congregation. But are the reward for congregation in the masjid, I assume, are like the reward in the congregation in the house? Of course not. In the masjid, it's higher than If you eat garlic or onion, then brush your teeth and eat mint. Is it okay to attend the masjid? Yes, of course, it's okay. Some people, they actually take it as an excuse not to go to the masjid. They eat the garlic and onion and they said, I cannot go to the masjid. That's it. They don't go. If the Khalifa needs to be from Quraysh, does that mean all the Khulafa need to be Arab? Or did the Prophet ﷺ mention the hadith in a specific context? Obey your leader even if he is a black slave. Now the leader in this is not actually the great leader, the Khalifa. We have lots of levels of leadership, correct? So for example, we have a leader for this company, a leader for the school, a leader for the organization, a leader for the job, a leader. The Prophet ﷺ directed us to obey your leader even if he is a slave person, even if he is with one eye. But we are speaking honed here about only the Khilafah leadership. The Khilafah has to be from Quraysh, as the hadith mentioned. Okay? Is there a chain till this day of people bringing it to Quraysh? Yes. And does that mean that the latest Khalifa, 24, not 26 by the way, it was 1924, was also from Quraysh? Yes. If someone lives in a village and the only person to lead the prayer is someone without a correct tongue, is the Jamaah prayer valid? If they are all the same, yes. If he is the most correct person between them, yes. Was the Ottoman Khalif invalid? No, it was valid. Why would we say that they are invalid? They are valid. Because Ottomans were not from Quraysh. Who said that? The lineage actually was in a way recorded, and people still have some records for their lineage from the Prophet ﷺ. And if my information are correct, they were all from Quraysh. Let me go back to it, and then let me investigate in it more. That came just as it's simple when we came to the Imam. We spoke about the Imamah, the great Imamah. It was just half a page, and we have all the questions about that half a page. I will get you the answers, inshallah, about the Khilafah and from Quraysh. And I will make the first slide or two about some details about the Khilafah and what the scholars said about it. And we'll speak about the Uthman Khulafa, whether they were from Quraysh or not. And that will be the first thing I will discuss, inshallah, next week. Okay? Inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. There's another question. Can you not pray behind a family member if your Quran recitation is correct and their one is not? What if you pray Sunnah behind their Fard prayer? You can pray Fard behind Sunnah or Sunnah behind Fard. There's no issues. If you are better reciter than the person, then it goes back at least to the obligation within the prayer. Meaning that Imam, is he able to recite Surah Al-Fatiha correctly? If he is able to recite Surah Al-Fatiha correctly and pray all the pillars correctly, then let him lead the prayer if he is older than you. For example, if you are a son and he is your father and he actually can recite Surah Al-Fatiha correctly, then his prayer is valid. Pray behind him. Give him the respect and pray behind your father.
Same goes for husband and wife. For example, if the wife is better in recitation,
you will make her the Imam?
No. I mean, will she be obliged to follow?
She is obliged to follow him, of course, even if she recites the Quran better than him. But if he has mistakes that are large mistakes, then she cannot pray behind him. She needs to pray alone. And she needs to educate him and give him lessons how to recite Quran correctly. Never ever make your wife Imam.
We're not that modern.
You cannot. Jazakallah khair, subhanakallah, alhamdulillah. Another question? No. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك